Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lizard Brains podcast. I'm your host, DJ Alessandrini. I'm joined by my co-host, Tom Gorman. Tom, how's it going?
DJ, I'm good because today we have a special guest. Our guest today is a 16-time national champion in the SCCA solo. 2014 SCCA Driver of Eminence, which is an award given to a driver who's exuded excellence behind the wheel. She is a road racer, an instructor. She's also an engineer with over 50 patents to her name in the medical department. She's a artist and glass blower. She's also got a cooler car collection than probably anyone listening. She is Shelly Monfort. Hi, Shelly.
Hello, Tom. Hi, DJ. How are you?
Hello, great. Thanks for asking. Actually,
Good.
nobody's ever asked that before.
No, you're the first one. I told you my intros were ever improving. How did I do?
Tom,
Very cool.
that was great, Tom. Great job. I mean, that's awesome. I I don't know if it topped my intro to Kenton Cook, but it was close enough.
It was close.
Yeah.
So Shelly, we usually start off with a little recap for how our weekend went. You were driving this weekend. Where were you and how was your weekend?
I was good. I was in beautiful, exotic Lincoln, Nebraska for Spring Nationals,
Ooh.
co-driving with ever-loving Sam Strano in the Mach 1 Mustang that Tom, you, and Sam and I all co-drove last year.
Mhm.
And, typical for Nebraska, the weather did not fully cooperate, but at least it wasn't too bad. We had some wet weather, and it was r- really kind of strangely cold. Like we hadn't even hit spring yet, and kind of strange because Lincoln, Nebraska can be 105 degrees over Memorial Day weekend. So went well, had fun. Car was pushy, but we fixed it. I think that surface is pretty strange. Got home. I'm a little jet lagged, but otherwise good.
No kidding on the jet lag.
What were you driving?
Sam's Mach 1
Oh, in F Street. Yep.
in F Street.
What can you guys change to make it less pushy? Does he have Penske's or something on it?
No, he went to a different sway bar setup, and it had too big a front sway bar. And it's funny. I don't always have a lot of confidence in myself in terms of how a car's handling. I always default to I think I forgot how to drive.
I've done that.
And I got dry
Same.
runs at the pro, and Sam was in damp conditions, and it changed the balance of the car for him because my thought was, we need to change the sway bar back. But we waited until Sunday, and by the time Sam got dry runs, it was like, this car is horrible. It felt like it was nationals a couple of years ago when the car was pushy, and we randomly figured out when they had us jack the car up and look at a front and rear tire that my friend Ken grabbed the rear sway bar and it was broken in two.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah, that
that would make it
like,
pushy.
Sam was
what
near the.
did half of it just come out of the car? How did it?
It was actually in one of the bushings, and so you couldn't tell. But
Oh,
when the car was jacked up, Ken just like yanked on the where the end link was and everything. It was like, oh, it's not connected. And so Sam's off, with another group of people, talking about what happened because he said it's the worst this car's ever handled. And I kept thinking, I think I forgot how to drive because every time I tried to go faster in the slalom, I just got behind. The car never did that that sort of slithering, whatever rear end moves back and forth. You get the timing right. And I
Yeah.
never got there with it. And so I went and found Sam, and all he said was, well, that explains some things.
one one time
And
I one time all the Coney shocks on the drive to the event, they all traveled in like different directions. So some was like full stiff, others were like full soft, some were like where they're normally set. And I just was having a
What?
really hard time placing the car, and I'm just like, man, my feel for the car and just where it's going to end up is awful today. And I like did a whole like morning session like that. Um but then I reminded myself, I was like, wait, normally when I have this feeling of like, did I forget how to drive randomly over like compared to last week? There's normally something wrong with the car. So I started checking stuff.
yeah, it's so easy to assume it's you. And luckily, I think Sam and I both figured out, wasn't us. I mean, Sam's pretty good about that, but By the time we got to the tour, we changed tire brands and we changed front sway bar.
Mm.
And so that, obviously changed the car in a couple different ways, but at least it oversteered for like the first time that entire weekend when we got to the tour. So that made it a bit more fun because by the by the challenge of the pro, I was just like, when is this going to be over?
Are we done yet?
The f
Yeah,
the
pretty
f
much. And it's just, it's like the event's fun, but like driving the car was kind of like I really want to hurry up because I just want to finish my run to get it over
Yeah.
with. So, and I mean the Mustang's usually a lot more fun than that. So that was kind of painful, but but we had more fun at the tour in terms of the at least the balance of the car and how it was handling. So, and we learned a little bit about what Falcon tires feel like because I had no no idea. So
Oh, that's right. So, well, I don't even want to start this tire discussion, but you guys have more tires to pick from this year than ever before, huh? I know Sam loves
yes.
that. So, before we go to the, I'm kidding. Before we go anywhere and close to that, before I ask any of our podcast classic questions, can you give us a little like rewind into how you found all this stuff? You found motorsports, you found racing, you found all this stuff because I know a bunch of what you did, but I don't actually know how you found this other than by chance. How, I mean, give us a
Um,
little connect the
Yeah,
dots.
actually, it wasn't by chance, and that's a good question. When I graduated from high school in 3 years, I just I didn't take the GED. I finished all my classes because I found high school kind of boring, and I was 16, and I didn't wanna basically go to a university away from home at that age, so I went to De Anza College here in California, and De Anza has a phenomenal, automotive technology program, and I loved cars. I didn't even have a driver's license at that point, but I just basically enrolled in that and just learned. They had three tracks. One was chassis, one was tuning, and one was suspension. And
Wait,
ultimately,
in
I
high
ended up.
school?
No, no,
It was
this
yeah.
it
It
was
was
like a
just out. It was like starting junior college.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was.
She hold on, Shelly, Tom, she did a like a speed run on high school because she found it was boring.
Right,
Now
right,
you're
right.
caught up, now you're caught
Yeah,
up.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, my best friend at the time, she kind of went one further and skipped a grade, finished high school in 3 years, did UC Berkeley in honors biochemistry in 3 years, and had her bachelor's degree at age 18. So she outdid me by quite a bit, but, I decided I just wanted to screw around for a couple of years. So I I went into the automotive technology program, and it was 125 guys and I think 3 women. And, um and I fixed cars and I built engines and it was great. I learned a ton. My dad was a mechanical engineer, actually an aeronautical engineer for NASA. So it's like anytime I got to use tools, it was super cool. Kind of doing this kinds of stuff my dad did in the wind tunnels. So anyway,
Yeah.
the neat thing about Dianza was they actually had two cars that were essentially race cars. They had a drag racing car and an autocross car,
Oh,
and you could it was awesome. And it's like, okay, this is typical me. I got to the whatever the club meeting for the automotive technology department like a little late, and they were discussing the two cars, and I made the assumption that you needed to sign up to like participate in like helping fix or build or whatever one of the two cars. Although it turned out it was optional, but it was great. It sounded really interesting and fun, and I actually ended up starting um like with the drag racing car, not the autocross car, and they were both um Dodges. There's a Dodge Colt and a Dodge um what was it? Like not a Plymouth Valiant, but it was like a Dodge Dart. They were really old. I mean, they were like I'm not that old. They were
Okay.
old cars even when I when I
Right, right.
got there. They'd like fallen. One of them had fallen off a train, going to a dealer, and so they
I'm picturing the
donated it
movie
to the
Grease.
school.
You guys are, like, dancing on top of the car. "Go Grease lightning."
the movie Grease.
Yeah.
Is
No,
that
I'm
what
kidding.
is that what it was like, or were they newer than that?
No, no,
No,
no.
I mean, the Dodge Dart was from the 70s or something. I mean, it was plum purple, that plum crazy metallic purple,
Oh, I got it.
and it
Hold on.
had 1,000 miles on it or something like that. And
Did it look
I
like
think they
that?
still have it. What's that?
I posted a picture in the chat.
Oh, cool. Yes. It was a very cool car, and I think it had 273 or something like that engine in it, and off we went. And students, it's like made every mistake possible. We had got one NR Gaudette who, like, I think he had some kind of Hurst shifter in his car, and managed to drag race the car, put it in reverse halfway down the track, and scatter the
Oh,
transmission, things like
oh
that.
no.
That was a thing you
It
could
was
do?
super fun. They made me drive the car on the dyno with the slicks on it, and I said, "I don't think this is a good idea." And I rode the dyno rollers up and jumped the car out of the dyno. I'm lucky I didn't hit the concrete wall on the other side. Um, Luckily, it's a lot of empty momentum when the car's it's like, you're revving up, but you're not going anywhere. So anyway, it was fun. And then eventually Deanza also had a once a year autocross. And I think it's my second year there, I ended up being the person in charge of managing the autocross. And I think I was 17. I still wasn't old enough to drive in it, which was pretty funny. But that's,
But you're in
where I met a
charge.
lot of the first SECA folks. Like Frank Stagnaro. I mean, he was like my hero when I was a kid. He had the same car
A
that he
Mustang,
does
right?
now. So I ended up doing that, and I stuck with it. I mean, I ended up working at a racing machine shop. I worked at Elgin's, which was he built end ground camshafts, as well as we built a lot of just engines for SCCA, road racing, and for Bonneville. And then I ended up with two of the customers there. I wanted to go to runoffs, and so I was 18, and here I leave with like these two guys towing sports 2000s to Road Atlanta, and I got to see the runoffs. Bumped into Paul Newman. That was so super cool. And was really immersed in it at the time. And I was starting to autocross by the time I turned 18, and I was really slow.
As
Okay.
everyone except Tom is when they first start out.
Yeah.
So you said that that you always loved cars. Where did that come from?
I don't know.
Was it just the
I guess
machinery of it?
it's like my dad knew a lot about cars, and he taught me how to apex a corner, even though it was in a Volkswagen camper. And
Nice.
um and so I was very mechanical, and we would go to the airport, and I got taught to ID different airplanes by engine configuration and all that. And my dad knew Chuck Yeager and people like that, from just being involved at NASA. So I was just very mechanical, and loved machines. So the cars thing became kind of second nature in terms of just having an interest in that. So when I joined the automotive technology program, then it just started going down the path of race cars rather than just cars.
Yeah. Cool. What a neat little origin story there. Cause I anything that I looked up, Shelly, because we Googled you, and Tom just knows a lot about you already, but I didn't see that in any of your origin stories that I found online.
Yeah, that's just probably before like microphones were invented or something.
Maybe.
So, I know that you did road racing. I don't know exactly when, but you were in a Datsun 2000. Is that right? Like a little
I
roadster?
went through SCCA driver school at Sonoma Sears Point. Again, I was maybe 19 at that point,
Yeah.
while I was in college. And at that point I transferred from De Anza to Stanford, and I was in like, I was in engineering physics when I tried to go through driver school, which is probably it was a really bad combination to try to do both of those things at the same time. Because I had never had high school physics, and I was taking physics from like Nobel laureates and stuff
Holy
with a bunch
cow.
of really well prepared students. I will
Students,
put it that
yeah.
way. But I survived it, and yeah, it was kind of like we had, my friend Ken and I had, we had no money, and we had really old cars, but we made it work. And the Datsun was kind of hard because at that time the Datsun was in GT3. So I went out with super production GT1, 2, and 3. So I basically had like full on Trans Am cars in my class with me,
Right. Yeah.
which was, insane. I couldn't even hear the car running when we were like sitting at the start. I'd have to look at the tach. And then, shortly after that, we got into, Datsun Z cars and BMWs and everything in basically street touring. And then went on from that to Formula Mazda. So I raced open wheel cars with wings, which was really, really fun. It was like it made road racing courses into an autocross course, which was just awesome. But road racing's really, really fun. It's just a ton of responsibility. And my heart, I think in a lot of ways, was always in autocrossing because it's just, you, the car, the course, the surface, the conditions and everything. And as much as I really liked the strategy, I was really good at um forcing people into errors or finding, picking my spot at starts and everything like that, which was awesome. But it's just I very quickly ended up with so much on my plate, work wise, recreation wise, and everything else that became hard to devote that much time and energy to road racing. So and again, I ended up gravitating more toward autocrossing at that point.
Interesting. I can relate to that a lot because I think actually DJ and I both can. We are
Yeah.
drivers who are fundamentally, if we had to pick a thing, I think we would end up autocrossing more likely than anything else because of the accessibility and the format and
The frequency.
the way you drive the car, the frequency with which you can do it. I mean, like we get accused, you know who you are. We get accused of being an autocross podcast sometimes, and I'm like, I'll take that. I think
Yeah,
autocross is freaking rad. It is
it
so
is.
hard. It's so compelling. It's not necessarily like glamorous, but it's so cool. So
It
I can
it
relate to
is
that a lot.
it is really, really cool. And I think, again, the road racing thing is definitely more macho in a lot of ways, especially in a formula car. But um it's like it's really hard, and you're driving offline a lot and all of that, and so you just don't get that pure perfect lap kind of thing that you do autocrossing, and it's just the challenge is different, and I love you know that just getting to the 10 tenths aspect of autocrossing, which and again again a lot of us just um we know how super cool that is. Not everybody does.
Yeah, and it's hard to convince somebody too. So let me
Yeah.
ask this: we have an ongoing kind of thing on this podcast, a discussion of talent versus effort, and it
uh
came up because back before we had the podcast, DJ and I would talk about whether talent exists. Is a driver talented, or is there simply effort involved with becoming a better driver? And I'm curious what your lived experience is as a driver, but also you've become an instructor. In a lot of ways, you work with a lot of drivers and you've co-driven with a lot of great drivers. So I don't know, what's your journey with that like talent versus effort as a driver mindset?
That's actually a really interesting question. And, obviously it's one of those necessary but not sufficient. Um, I think there is some aspect of talent from the standpoint that, I don't know, we ended up with this sort of unofficial acronym in instructing. I think it's called OSB, other sports beckon.
Oh, jeez.
you
That's not
know,
where I thought you were going, but yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it's a really diplomatic way of saying maybe this isn't really the thing for you. Um, and I definitely have seen people kind of in that category where it just never totally clicks. And I think instructing, a lot of times you can pull someone up by their own bootstraps, and get them kind of to mimic you and improve, and then they it's like they crash right back down again. And again, I don't know how much of that is like a discipline and commitment thing and how much is a talent thing, but I definitely think there is some innate aspect to it. Some people just have higher clock speeds than others in terms of, recognizing what they're doing and making decisions. A lot of people who autocross at the top, having driven with a lot of phenomenal drivers, it's like 99% of those people, in my view, are like very, very intelligent people. So I think that helps a lot too. And it's not just a car preparation thing, it's also It's actually making decisions while you're driving,
Problem
and even
solving.
driving with
cr-
Sam, I really think I think there's a clock speed issue. I mean, Sam will admit he's just like gets very frustrated because he's very ADHD, but I think things come at him autocrossing at about half the speed mentally that like time slows down for him in a way that it doesn't for me. And I talked with I don't know, one of my parents' neighbors that said their son was having trouble in school and he was unable to really get a lot of what the instructors were saying in class. But if he recorded the lecture and then listened to it at twice the speed, he had no problem at all. It was like his brain was trained for double the speed of sort of the average person. And I think for some people autocross, that's an innate thing that helps them. And it doesn't mean that that effort can't overcome that because I think it can overcome a lot of it. Um, but it also requires a level of commitment. And autocrossing is so, again, it's fun and it's casual. And you have to be careful that you don't, as a competitor, you don't fall into not being committed enough from a serious standpoint in terms of improving. Whereas, I mean, road racing, you kind of have to do that or you get like left in the dust.
Uh, sure.
So, so would you say that? So, like the where we always end up on this debate is that there's like inherent like personality traits that will help somebody like come out of the gate faster than other
Hmm.
people. Uh,
Yeah.
but like where I stand is that anything that we're doing as a driver can be learned by
Hmm.
anyone. Now, I totally get the clock speed thing, and some people are just better at troubleshooting than other people. And a lot of what comes down to driving is being able to troubleshoot like the issues that you're having, whether it's with the course or your own driving or the way you're approaching something like that. So I I could see how that could come into play. Um, but do you think
Right.
have you ever seen anybody that just like they have no training before that just jumped in a car. They didn't play video games, they didn't kart, nothing, and they were just like inherently good at it.
Yeah, I had one friend who was not a car person who uh that I just brought autocrossing and tried it for the first time. And it's a kind of an unusual person, but I'd say he had a phenomenal skill at sort of observe, figure out, adjust, try it again. And it was like a feedback loop that was like extremely well honed in general. Um, I mean, he could adapt so quickly that he was really pretty good at it, and he just really didn't deal with cars at all. He was so funny because they put him out on course to like, he was like the radio guy, and he has a heavy accent, and he's like, "Oh yeah, 2 cones on the blue car," and I hear timing go, "You mean the Porsche?" And he's like, "I don't know what kind of car it is." And then like
That's so
all the people
funny.
in like his corner are like, "What?"
That's funny.
It was hilarious.
Did this
But
did this individual stick with it, or did he kind of just bounce off of it and went, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, you guys have your fun."
yeah, um, he he did it once. He would have been very good at it if he'd stuck with it. Unfortunately, sometimes what comes with brilliance is like other challenges, and he was like a bit of like borderline personality disorder. So there was a whole host of like drama that had nothing to do with autocrossing. Um, and it was just sort of interesting because it's just like someone who's like, incredibly talented. And then, he would be the first to admit he was his own worst enemy at times. But
Sure.
yeah, if he had stuck with it, he'd have been really, really good at it. But, uh, but he ended up, he's like driving tractors and stuff instead, and loving that. So, everybody finds their niche, I guess.
Hopefully,
Honestly, I bet driving tractors in certain aspects is not that different than autocross because there's some precision involved. There's some like accuracy and attention to detail involved.
what with a
Like not
tractor?
literally, guys, driving on a tractor is not the same as autocross, but
What the? Where are you
I
going
could
with
see there
this?
being some of the same. Well, there's some of the same kind of like hyper attention to detail. I could totally see that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You have to be very in the moment.
Wait,
Because I mean, now there's so many GPS systems and things that can do tractor harvesting and
we're
things
talking like
like at a
farming
detail level
tractor,
that
right?
humans can't do. But whatever this guy's doing is, I'm sure it.
We're talking like
Yeah.
farming tractor, right? Where you're like out in a field.
I'm talking like no, he builds trails, like park trails.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
so you're talking like you're looking at you've got a tractor and you're looking at, where trees are and how you level things out and how much and it's a grip thing. It's like you're usually in a situation where it's you're in dirt, you're in mud, you're not on a level surface. You've got a very heavy piece of equipment. You're having to back things up. Yeah,
Shelly,
so I think there's a lot of similarity in terms of you have to manage a lot of like balance of the vehicle, and you're just doing it a lot more slowly in terms of how, like your miles per hour. But the adjustment and having to be in the moment is very similar.
what was he doing this before you took him to an autocross event?
He had
Ooh,
done
good
it before
question.
I'd taken him to an autocross event. Yeah.
Boom, we got him. Talent doesn't exist. We got it.
Tractor drivers make great
Tractor drivers.
autocrossers or
Yeah, look.
race car
Hey, look.
drivers.
Look, if you're listening to this
The new
podcast,
category.
yep, if you've listened to this podcast and you're driving tractors on the side of hills and you're thinking about the grip and the weight of the vehicle, come on out. Come on. We're ready for
You're
you.
gonna be the next Senna.
Yes.
Um, I have a question about I guess so. You and I met in, I would say, the early 2010s, and I remember one of the super early conversations we had was about you. You were engineering. Correct me if when I'm wrong. You were engineering a artificial limb system, foot system that was part of your medical research, and we talked about how that related to coordinating the relationship to the false limb to the brain. Am I right at all? Am I completely wrong? Tell me about this.
Wow.
This was like
I
2013, 12 maybe?
I'm
Tom,
trying to remember artificial
that
limb.
was like
Or
30
foot?
that was 30 patents ago, Tom.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because that was when you and I first met and had a longer conversation than, "Hi, hello, I'm Tom, you're Shelly."
Sure.
And I've noticed since then, in that time, that last 10 years, let's say, you have a pattern of seeking out or finding or accidentally ending up in co-driving situations with some of the best.
Yes.
In terms of autocross, you have obviously Sam. You co-drove with Brian Heitcotter for a while. You were
Hmm.
co-driving with Sam and John V for a little while in that red BMW in the picture. So I want to know if that's on purpose, if that's on accident, because something DJ and I talk about a lot is like finding a community that builds self-coaching and communal coaching a little bit.
Ah.
Um, so that's how it ties in, I guess. Tell me about that. Like, are you doing that on purpose, or is these are just the people you gravitate towards, and you're going to co-drive with them whether you like it or not?
I Good question. It's interesting. I When I came back to autocrossing, actually the first person I really ended up co-driving with was Matthew Braun, and that was
Right. Yeah.
um another phenomenal driver.
One
And
of
it
the
was
best.
actually indirectly to Matthew because I ended up friends with Liz and Don Leckie, and Liz is a physician. So, and we were both in Lotuses, in Elise's. So, all of those connections kind of came together. And, Liz contacted me and asked me if Matthew could drive my car out in Southern California. And I said, sure, come on out. And that's how that kind of got started. And so that started to connect me to some of the real go-getters or whatever in autocrossing. And um it wasn't because Matthew was fast. It was for other reasons that we ended up driving together. But it also became kind of obvious that I guess I'm a person who's um I'm very motivated, I guess. I'm always trying to like optimize things or do things better or whatever. It's like I don't watch TV, I'll watch a movie occasionally, but I don't think I've watched like a television show in a decade. said, like, um, do not have me on your team for Trivial Pursuit or whatever because I'm terrible. Um, Although a friend of mine said he just checked his Trivial Pursuit game and like pulled out a card and it said, what's the most read publication in the country? And the answer was TV Guide, at which point he threw his Trivial Pursuit game out.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds like a really old version of Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's we've moved on. So yeah, I ended up driving with Matthew, and then driving with Matthew was how I met Sam. And and again, it's been, I guess it's, a lot of times I just end up having like real conversations with people about what kind of a lot of the things that you're talking about in this podcast. Do you think it's talent or do you think it's effort? Do you how did you get to where you are? Did you start out slow? And, what was the moment that, or the progression that actually, brought you to that point? I mean, Brian and I talked a lot about that. He lives not that far from me, and we ended up going to the same doctor, and he actually stayed at my house for like a week at a time sometimes. So we have a lot of conversations about that. And Brian's a very thoughtful person, um, in
Right.
terms of considering details and why things work. He's kind of quiet, but he's a very very bright individual, and and really tries to think these things through and figure them out. So again, just I think it was kind of circumstance and everything that I ended up where I was, and it was a lot. It was so much Sam that helped me actually come up to speed literally in the sport. Because like I said, yes, like most people, I was slow when I started out. Also, when I started autocrossing, I was 18 or whatever, we didn't typically have passengers. It was really rare. So I didn't even have a sense for what pace felt like, until I finally rode with someone.
Interesting.
It was like several years in, and I had no idea it was as frantic as it was from the inside. And, and it's things like that where, you never have a like, you rarely have a linear progression of like, you get a little faster, a little, and, it just rewards you in this nice sort of gradual way. You should like something strikes you and you get a lot faster. And then, you struggle with something else and it's kind of an up and down. And hopefully it's, always in the getting faster direction. But um, it took, it took a lot of work from, from Sam, just like leaning on me a lot about, you know, well, you got to look more through this, or, you've got to pick up the pace, or it's like I get out of corners faster than most people do. Like keep, following my lead here. And then, of course, data has been, huge help in that, um, in terms of, just that the feedback loop that you get. And then I finally, got a Gran Turismo, set up together, which Brian and I put together here, and discovered that my calling is really actually as a rally driver.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like I just like those dirt roads and everything like in Gran Turismo. I could just like ace all of them instantly. I just like I really should have. That's what I should have been doing.
Have you ever done any rallying? Because
I haven't, and I would
you
love
can.
to.
There's nothing
I
Same.
stopping
know.
you.
That, and when I went to Park City, Utah, and I rode the. You can take the toboggan like in the
Okay.
summertime. They run it at about 90% of like Olympic speed.
Wait, so
What's
you sit in the bobsled, right? And you ride
Yeah,
down
you sit in a
the
bobsled and you just
that sounds so
basically,
fun.
they don't push you as hard as, as they do, starting on an Olympic
Sure.
run, but you look at the time and you're like 90% of what the times are. And I mean the G loading is
wait?
unbelievable and it's so much
Can
fun.
anybody do this?
Yeah.
Yes, you just have to sign a waiver. I've always wanted to do an all waiver vacation where everything you do requires signing a
Yes,
waiver.
I
please.
love it.
That sounds like my
I would love
style
to
of
do a
vacation.
bobsled. Wait, I have a real quick question. This is a detour about like the whole crashing on a mountain thing and whatever. As far as I know, you live on a mountain road where people crash into your front yard regularly, right? Am I
Yeah,
wrong?
I live on Highway 9, in and yeah, for Silicon Valley, the road past my house is like the racing road. And also
Okay.
Silicon Valley, we have, every manner of car you can possibly imagine. I think 2 of my neighbors that are less than 5 miles away have Bugatti Veyrons. It's like it's an interesting crowd. Um,
Holy
and
cow.
I'm like the poor person
You
of the
yeah,
group.
look,
But
all you need is money to buy those cars. You don't even need to know how to drive them. You just need to
you do
write a
not need
check.
talent.
Yeah, you don't need anything. You don't even need to drive tractors on mud hills to be able to buy a Bugatti Veyron.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is very true. Um, yes, and I've seen it all, in terms of where I live. And yeah, I mean, years ago, I lived about 8 miles from where I do now, and I was on the top of the mountain, and I ended up with the fire department. So I went out on a lot of calls in terms of some really spectacular things that happened. I ended up like there was a lovely 427 Corvette convertible that crashed, and I had met the owner before, um, once, sort of local person or whatever. But he's sitting on the curb, kind of holding his face, and he's like, "It's just, can you like find my eye?"
Like his actual
And
What?
eye?
I'm like,
Like,
you know, and he's got sort of like one part of his face covered, and I remember asking him, uh, so like before you take your hand off your face, can you tell me if it's like, is it a glass eye or is it a real eye that I'm looking for? And it turned out he had a
my
glass eye, and it
God.
like
Oh, okay. All
it
right.
went flying into the
At
woods.
least he was already a pirate. I thought he was like a new like fresh. I thought he was a
A,
fresh pirate.
a
And
freshly minted pirate.
yeah, and
Thank God, no, that would have been worse. But yeah, the
and he
highway
just
patrol officer was a woman, and I spent a lot of time looking for his eye, and we did not find it. I
Oh
guess they're
boy.
expensive.
was this in your yard?
And then another unrelated friend of mine, who that I went to De Anza College with, who was in the automotive technology program. They ended up in a car restoration business where they were doing a lot of really, really high end muscle cars and everything. And he said, "Oh yeah, we had a beautiful Corvette come in." That we restored, not that long ago. We were talking about cars, and he said the insurance company had the weirdest request. They said, "If you find an eye in the car," and I'm like, "I know that car. It's the same
That is
car."
so crazy. Holy
Yeah,
cow.
but we never found the eyes. Probably some jogger found it or something. But yeah, so we just like all kinds of. I mean, we've just had all kinds of crazy things go on by my house, and it's the Bay Area is you have the ocean, you have the Santa Cruz Mountains, they're about 2,500 feet. Then you got Silicon Valley, and then you go east of that, and you get the Mount Hamilton Range, which is about 5,500 feet. And due east of me, if you just drive right over Mount Hamilton, is Crow's Landing, and that's California's breadbasket. That's the
Oh,
Central
yeah, yeah.
Valley for people who call California Cali. Um, so
Do
um,
do
so
Californians
yeah, we
not
have.
call California Cali?
Do not call California Cali. Do not call San Francisco Frisco. And if
And
you're going
don't
to
break your
refer
spaghetti in half.
to, yeah, that's just, you just don't do it. And if you're going to be in Southern California, you need to call the freeways the 405. You don't say I was on 405. You say I was on the 405.
DJ would be so lost in California.
I'm still
Oh
They
think
just were so
no.
weird.
I'm still thinking about this eye being in some kid's like marble collection.
Yeah,
Right.
$3,500 marble or whatever, $3,500
Kid doesn't even
eyeball.
know
I
what he
just,
has.
yeah,
Maybe check on Facebook Marketplace and the seller goes, "I know what I have."
that's right. I got an eye. Doesn't fit everyone, but could fit you. I mean, I had to look for someone's leg once.
Oh.
So,
What?
you know,
What hold on. Hold
You
on.
should have led with
Hold
that.
on before we jump to conclusions. Was this a glass leg?
unfortunately, it was actually her leg
Oh,
that
it was an
I was
actual
looking
leg.
for.
All right, all right.
It was an actual leg, yeah. Yeah, that one was rough.
Oh no. Well, I was gonna
Yeah.
ask if you ever advertised driver coaching on your mountain road, but that's a
You
little different.
should.
This road is so famous, Highway 9 and Skyline, that we actually have people who are photographers. You can like go and, as you come over like one of the
Oh,
rises
sure,
or
yeah.
whatever, where the guy is who like takes everyone's photos, and then it's like a
Right, right, right.
like a luau in Hawaii or whatever. They like they stop at the at Alice's restaurant or whatever, and they're selling all the photos.
Yeah, like Killboy out here in Tail of the Dragon. So you're I guess we left off at like starting to autocross and you're driving with some of these I'm trying to like figure out the best way to ask this question, but you basically you've been co-driving and you work with through schools and there's this measuring stick we talk about, I guess, that's like if you put
Hmm.
yourself on the true measuring stick of what is possible with the car, we're playing a game of physics, and if you're co-driving with the right people, if you're competing in the right class, whatever it may be, if you put yourself on the true measuring stick of where is the possibility for me to end up as a driver, and uh, you're starting to put yourself on that measuring stick with driving with these people and working with these people, but you also have this aspect of autocross, which offers ladies classes, which
Hmm.
introduces a different measuring stick. I'm curious from your perspective, is there any difference going into an event when you have the option to compete in different arenas, let's say, and correct me when I'm not saying this tactfully, but you have the way that your goals and your mindset work coming into the event. Is there any difference at all? Because DJ and I both we kind of have like we enter the event and that's where we do it. And
Right.
there's there's a bunch of drivers who pick one between one or the other or whatever else. How does that start to factor into when you're driving with either co-driving with other drivers or driving your own car? I mean, you have a ton of your own cars too. So I don't even know if I asked a question there, but
I
if I
think
did,
I think the question would
what do you thought?
be
What do you think?
I think the question would be where does the ladies class in autocross, like what role does that play for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Yeah. I understand what you're asking, and it's like, yeah, you're trying to ask it diplomatically because it is, it's a question. People have really strong opinions about ladies' classes in autocrossing, and this morning I looked up. I actually did a like one of the AI deep searches and said, "Tell me in 50 years of SCCA national event, national championships." Like, where do women fall compared to men if you take a few outliers out on, either end of the bell curve? Um,
Mhm.
and it basically said there's a 3 to 5% difference in terms of the top drivers that are women versus men, which basically results in on a 60-second course, you've got about a 1 to 2 second difference between uh, the women who are going the fastest and the guys. And it said it's interesting because there are plenty of women who beat most of the men, but when you get to the very top, there's this
Yeah.
tiny little difference. And the question is, what is that? and and I know it's a touchy subject for a lot of people, but it's one we should talk about because that's why we have these podcasts and everything. It's something to think about and try to figure out because my feeling is as a female, it's like I'm as committed to this. I'm very smart and I work really hard at it. And I don't think, I mean, I'm kind of complimenting women in that it's like women work just as hard as guys do. They understand mechanics as well as guys do if they want to. Um, and so when they're out there going, a little slower than their co-driver, if they're driving with a guy who's really fast, it's like they're not doing anything wrong. They're not, they're not, it's not that they're not as talented or anything like that. It's just a little bit of a, like an edge difference. And it's, I think that's maybe speaks to that, there's a good reason for ladies classes to exist. Because we don't really understand what those differences are. Um, and I've done and Tom, you and I've talked about this a little bit, but I've researched a little
Yeah.
bit about how people's brains work and um, whether there's really any difference. There's obviously, it's kind of like the talent versus versus hard work aspect of autocrossing. Well, how much of this is cultural, where there are studies about girls versus boys who raise their hands in class. I mean, in general, when teachers ask questions, guys raise their hands more often, and even if they're wrong. um, and so there's probably a cultural aspect there. Another thing that's really interesting is a lot of the top women in autocrossing. I mean, like from Tamara Krisnick to Mary Posey. A lot of the women who are really fast have a background in riding horses competitively. Like
Yeah.
what that connection is, I'm not really entirely sure.
Yeah, what is that?
I think Shauna Marinus, same thing.
My understanding of that is that there's a lot of connection between your visual exercises while riding the horse and what information the horse receives through your body.
Hmm.
I may not be completely right, but I know Andy Smedegard, one of my close friends, his girlfriend is a huge horseback rider, and she's even done some simulator sessions on like a simulated horse that measures the amount of weight difference between right and left leg and where your preferences lie with your physical, you know, uh, riding the horse and how does that communicate to the horse where you want to go, whatever. But it,
Hmm.
yeah, at least what I know is that it's all because I've instructed a lot of motorcycle riders. I've instructed a lot of airline pilots or
Hmm.
airplane, they call it flyers, pilots, I guess. It, like it's operating a thing that you're not a part of, but you're in or on.
Right,
there's
right.
so much to it that's visual exercises, um, that I could I have to imagine that's where the success from comes from.
Yeah, I think that's some of it. And it's sometimes I think horses are almost like training wheels. You have another brain, unlike a motorcycle or an airplane. So it's almost like you're getting a feel for the balance, changing direction, the courageousness aspect of it. Most of my near death experiences, I haven't ridden horses a lot, but any near death experiences I've had have generally been on horses or ponies.
L
That
Lang
or in the ocean, it's
Lang
like large aquatic creatures like want to swallow me whole. Um, but those are different stories. But anyway, yeah, I think it's almost like it kind of trains you. You get some help from the horse, and you sometimes have to summon more courage than you wanted to.
Sometimes the horse doesn't help you though. I was watching Langley posted some horse competition stuff on Instagram, and I was watching her like trying to jump over these things, and the horse just like did not want to do that, but she wanted the horse to
Yeah,
do that. And that looked terrifying. Like
it,
can you imagine
it
if you
is.
tried to turn into a corner and the car's like, maybe not.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like I don't know. The Lotus Elise had terrifying ice mode characteristics, and same kind of thing. You'd like step on the brakes going into a corner if you just had a very stiff front sway bar, so it'd pull a wheel off the ground in the back, and you try to stop, and the ABS is like, "Oh no, you're on ice," and you swear you hit the gas, and that's probably something similar to I've definitely felt you go to jump over something on the horse, and the horse goes nope, and you come to a stop.
So
Right.
And it's not what you were expecting, so, you have to hold on and make sure you don't go over the front. Um, so and again, I think maybe all those experiences help, but, I don't know, if I think about, just looking at studies of how men versus women see things, there are very slight differences in terms of how men, um, sort of see, three-dimensionally in terms of spatial information. And sometimes I wonder if maybe it's like guys are recognizing where they are as they're exiting a corner, maybe a half of a tenth of a second sooner than women are in terms of like going, oh, yeah, I'm here. I can go now. And if you look at a half a tenth of a second, you added up, 20 corners or something or elements, that's a second to 2 seconds. And I don't know. I guess I'm just really super curious about it because I figure if you recognize it and then you try to understand it, like you're saying, DJ, it's like you can work at it. You can actually train in like specific ways to get beyond it, and that's kind of what I've tried to do.
So in data between you and Sam, because you're like
Mhm.
what, like a second behind Sam, like on average on like a 60-second course?
Yeah, I would say on average, yes.
Yeah. So in data, what's the
Where is it?
difference? Yeah, like is there are you seeing trends? Are you like what is there like some is there like a singular like low-hanging fruit of something that you could work at, or is it death by like a thousand cuts where there is no like specific trend? What is what's like the data showing?
Um, it's it's interesting. It's like this weekend I had trouble seeing a couple corners, and I think that was and it was errors. And Tom, like driving with you, it's one of the things that just impressed me so much was how well you minimize errors and you keep the car just moving forward at its absolute maximum speed. And of course, that's the name of the game. And obviously, Sam's extremely good at that as well. And Sam and I had when we were in the Corvette, what we discovered was sometimes I would actually get out of a corner better than he did in the Corvette because in the Corvette, it's not such a good idea to let the tail out in kind of the way that Sam drives Mustangs. You lose
Right.
time. It feels like you're on the gas early and you're aggressive, but it was not faster.
Yep.
And again, the data. I mean, we would never have known that if we hadn't been able to look at data. Um, Sam gets out of corners faster than just about anybody, and he will beat me out sometimes. I think probably more often than that is um it's just a little bit of being a little bit more ahead in terms of not so much car placement in terms of apex calling, need you over here. Um More like the
Apex
angle of
calling.
the car, like the
I
last
like that.
couple um of maneuvers in a slalom. You're finishing a slalom, and Sam's just a little more. Um, I don't know if you want to call it backsiding, but he's got a little bit better angle than I do. It's like I don't know if he judges it and can see it a little quicker than I can, but he gets back to where he needs to be, which means he can accelerate out of the corner a little sooner than I can. And that's often what I see in the difference between us. And man, that car placement and angle, again, if you set up just a little better, and I'm really pretty good at setting up, but he can generally, especially something where you have to like go from one to the next really quickly. He'll get me there, and then he'll get out quicker than I do. And like at a finish, he'll have 4 miles an hour on me, and it's a tenth of a second or two.
Yeah, I see exactly what you mean. It's interesting. It kind of boils down to a willingness to induce the mistake. It kind of
Yeah.
sounds like what you're describing, because there are times where, okay, we're in a 500 horsepower Corvette Z06 and I'm going to put my foot down, and even if it feels fast to like ride this thing out, it may not be faster, but maybe 7 out of 10 times it works out, which I kind of tell people, e- especially people who tend to drive clinically very well but with a lack of aggression. It's a bit of like, I would rather you dirty this up and make a bunch of mistakes and try really
Hmm.
hard than drive the way you're driving, where you're so perfect clinically that you lose out the opportunity to maximize the true potential of the vehicle.
And
It
then
sounds a little bit like, oh, go ahead, DJ.
well, then adding on to what Tom's saying, like when you start muddying it up a little bit, you start to see where the gaps in your driving are. So like
Absolutely.
if you're too clinical about it, then you're not opening yourself up for like what the potential low hanging fruit is. Because
Yes.
when the car's really dancing around is when you're really gonna start to see, like, are you managing the weight correctly? Is your placement on
Right.
that cone actually correct for when the car's slithering around? Yeah, stuff like that. Shelly, I would be really, really interested the next time that me, you, and Sam are all at the same event, which might just be solo nationals, to
Hmm.
actually look at the data and see if there's
Hmm.
like some kind of like overarching like difference, like, oh hey, it's this, like maybe
Right.
Sam's he has the weight on the nose until he leaves the corner difference, or something like some like overarching like this is the thing that Sam's doing better. that's
Yeah.
allowing him to get like those better exits most of the time. And it could be like a positioning thing or it could be something, but I would be really curious to just try to find like the one thing.
Or that
I
Shelly's doing better.
Yes. Well,
yeah, it well
what I'm saying, because
it and
and if Shelly just
it
beats
does
Sam, then yeah, we'll look at why Sam was got beat. But we're
yeah,
going
we
on the average.
well, and that's what's interesting. It's like I Sam's very serious at looking at my data driving together because we will trade off sometimes. And again, you know data well enough to know that you can beat someone into a corner if you drive straight into it, and then they beat you out because you know they they basically positioned the car better and got down to a lower speed so they could get out of it better. So you have to be really careful about taking things in little tiny segments. Um,
Yep.
but Sam lost a national championship in Super Stock or Super Street or whatever we called it at the time, because there was a showcase corner that we looked at his data and mine, and I drove way to the inside and saved distance, and I gained 4/10 on him. And and he was like, I didn't need nearly that much to win. Like, why? And I drove before he did, and he hadn't looked at it, and he was like, oh, why did I
Oh
not?
no, that sucks. Because if he would have just looked at it at some point, he would have had the easy button for like his third run.
Uh-huh. It would have been the
Mm-mm.
easy button. And I can say also, alternately for me, I think one of the biggest things that I've done, or I should say I've been able to do differently. And DJ, this gets back to what you were saying. When I take my first run, especially like in the Cayman, I've been driving that more. Sam's car this weekend, it was like a lot of adjustment. I don't think I'd driven it since we drove at Finger Lakes last year. So it was definitely a very different car from from a turbocharged Cayman. But in the Cayman, I every run I've gone out and actually made like I've won a pro solo in L2 on my first runs.
Yeah.
Um, and that's not even 5 years ago, probably what I would have done. But when you go that fast on your first run, you find out immediately where your weak points are. Problem is if you take and again, this gets back to ladies class versus open. It's tempting sometimes for women who are very good in an L class to drive well enough instead of their best. Um,
Oh.
and and it can like it can reward being somewhat conservative, I guess, and it's not a conscious thing. It's just that you can kind of get by without taking those risks. And the thing is, if you go out on your first run and you do a banker kind of run, you don't know where you're going to have problems until you get to your third run, and then you have the problems. If you go out and you go like, at your own personal limits on your first run, you find out, you don't see the sweeper that well, or you're taking an element, poorly and you can fix it. And for me, it's just so much easier to come in after a faster, more aggressive, more I'm going to make mistakes first run because I'd much rather fix mistakes than I would come at things from the underside and keep very, very, very slowly and very beautifully, trying to get to that limit. If that makes any sense.
No, it does for sure because I when I started autocrossing, driving, whatever, I was a throw everything at the wall and figure out what sticks. But I
Yeah.
didn't even know what stuck. Like I just kind of like threw everything at the wall. I would just arbitrarily decide like that slalom's flat out, and I would try, and I would just try it every run.
Tom would
I've
convince
ridden with you. I,
himself.
I know that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I know you do
Tom
that.
Tom would
right.
convince himself this slalom is flat, even if it's not. He would spend the whole event trying to make it flat.
Yes, I
Yes.
literally would. This is a long time ago, but so to your point that you just said. So is there that's fascinating to me. Is there a difference in the way that you had to push yourself, maybe whether it's related to the class you entered in or not? Was there like oh, I have to
Yeah.
try X hard. Oh, I thought I could just drive around this way, but I have to do this to like really wake myself up and get to the limit and like was an active learning curve for you?
I think it I learned even in the Lotus that I had to take. I mean, the Lotus was absolutely terrible on cold tires on Hoosiers, and I
Yeah.
mean, it would just push off the course. But the problem was, if I did not do that, my pace all the way around the entire lap wasn't up to speed. So I just basically told myself, you need to make the car slide on the first corner. I don't care if it looks horrible and you hit 5 cones and you embarrass yourself or whatever else. It's like you just have to do that. And it's kind of like you in the slaloms, like, I'll just take it flat out. It's like you do that enough times, you going at that pace and trying to basically recover from those kinds of errors, you just get better at it, and your errors also become smaller. You're driving 102%, not 115. So I think that makes a big difference. And it's interesting, and again, I'll kind of digress a little bit on this about men versus women. When I teach a little bit differently. I mean, I try to tailor it to whoever I'm teaching. Um, but an interesting thing I've kind of learned, and again, it's not absolutely gender based, but for some reason with women, if they're having a problem with pace, which I do frequently see, where they drive really well in the right places, but they're just not, there's that aggression edge isn't there. And I go through a visualization exercise with them where I go, okay, we're going to take the next lap and you're going to pretend that there's a car in front of you and the person has they left their wallet on the top of their car on the roof, and it's going to fall off and just spill all over the freeway, any moment now, and you need to catch them. And so they pull up and then I like yell at
Okay.
them the whole lap, like, they're making the next corner, the wallet's about to go. And like all of a sudden they start like squeezing the gas on in those little spots
Uh-huh.
where
Oh,
they're
yeah,
gonna, like,
yeah.
gain a little bit where they didn't before. And I
Interesting.
don't
Okay, so
it's
yeah, go
really
go ahead.
fascinating because, like, maybe it's appealing to compassion instead of just sheer aggression. But, I mean, I had a woman, she was actually, originally from Japan, who'd driven here for years and was an S2000. She was really very, um she drove really well in terms of being in the right places, but she was missing that edge, and we did that visualization exercise, and she matched, Tom, I'm trying to think, up in Oregon, um, one of the other instructors, she matched his time when she came in, and she just started crying. She just
I
couldn't
feel
believe it.
that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's because you're always gonna learn more from your mistakes than you will just not making them. Like, if you don't make a
Yes.
mistake, what are you actually learning from, right?
Yes.
Tom
Well, and
Kotzian. I had to Google it.
Tom
Sorry.
Gottsian, yes, it was Tom.
Yes.
Yes, yes, Tom, lovely person, actually. Yeah, and he was like cheering for her as well. It was like super fun. And I guess, again, maybe also for me personally, I mean, this doesn't have anything to do with my gender, but like I'm not afraid to do things that I might make fairly glaring mistakes. Because twice I told Brian Harmer I would sing the national anthem at nationals, and so he like this was like 6 or 7 years ago, and he's like, "Okay, go for it." Little do you know, I had never done that before anywhere.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay. And I thought the one thing that I'd need to make sure is that I'm not nervous, because if I'm nervous, it's just not going to go well no matter what. And so I just really focused on not being nervous. And it went well enough, at least, that they had me do it again the next year. And I remember Mikey Meyer was standing in CP grid or something, and he's like, "That was awesome. Leanne Rhymes got nothing on you."
So
Not
what
sure it
we
was
need to do next time we gotta
that
have you
good, but
sing and DJ plays it on the trumpet because he's a trumpeteer.
yes, there you go.
Oh my goodness. Uh, trumpet update. I've been so busy with motorsport stuff that I actually haven't really played in like the last like 3 months. So the Star Spangled Banner would not go well right now.
Oh, yeah, those I tried playing trombone for a little while. That was tough. Wrong notes galore. So yeah, singing it was at least a notch easier for me. And you guys may have known, just like, I don't know, looking at different stuff that had gone on at nationals. I also entered the talent contest and did 13 minutes of stand-up comedy, and that was another thing I'd never done
What,
before.
really?
Yeah.
I
That's
didn't know that.
that's always been like a dream of mine. Like, I wish I could just go to open mic night and just like make a fool out of myself like the first couple times, but you get like that like first couple like bombs out of the way and then like you do some like stand up
Yep.
comedy. Like, I would love that. But the first couple bombs are like the most terrifying thing ever. So, like your
Yes.
bravery just to go up and do like stand up and these would be in front of strangers. Like these people would never see me again. And I would be
Yeah.
terrified of that. To do that in front of like your peers and people that you are seeing, that's a crazy amount of bravery there. Like kudos to that.
It
Like
was
that's crazy.
it was insane. It was insane bravery, I think. Um but I was like, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, they don't laugh or whatever. And I didn't realize it, but all the DC region folks all showed up. They were way more terrified for me than I was. So they were all there to like laugh just in case
The
it
laugh
went really
track.
badly.
That's
And
actually
JG
very
Nice.
nice.
Pasterjack didn't tell me that basically people had tried it before and it had always bombed, always was terrible. Um, but he was afraid to let me know because he wanted me to try, and I won. I won the talent
No, wait.
contest. I won a set of talent.
I'm kinda bummed they don't do the
Um,
talent show anymore. Why don't they do
What
that
was
I
your
know
what
anymore?
it's
was your
really a
was your set
bummer, and
about? Was
I
it a
had
comedy show about autocross or was it
it
like
was a comedy
sorry, I cut
show
you off.
about autocross, and it was I did an impression of Danny Kao, and I had these cards. It was like, you're a hardcore autocrosser when you have a Cracker Barrel credit card or whatever, um,
Sure.
and it was like, and someone's like flipping through their phone, and they're like, "Oh, Tinder," and he was like, "No, bring a trailer," and
You
so
might be a
actually it was
redneck. Yeah.
and I just like yeah, I just like stood up and just had fun. And I had 4 people come to me and go, I'm like being totally serious. You need to change careers and do this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
quit the
awesome.
medical engineering. Wait, so I wanna rewind the pushing somebody who is tentative thing, because the
Yeah.
closest I've ever heard for when you said there's a person in front of you whose wallet's gonna fall off their car and you gotta catch them. Closest I've heard to that I've used is, uh, somebody who's like they're obeying the rules so fiercely that they're just like following the speed limit. And I'm like, "Are you if the speed limit says 50, are you going 50?" They're like, "No, I go 55, 57, whatever." I'm like, "Okay, so here there's not even a speed limit. You can break every rule that you know. Like break all the rules that you could ever even think of, just go, you know?" And I think the way you verbalized it is more uh productive. But still, there's that like I don't know. I love that way of introducing urgency that doesn't really happen before you do any motorsports driving. Like driving on the road, you're not supposed to be urgent.
I feel like it almost
Right.
teaches bad habits.
Yeah, everything on the road is opposite of the
Yeah,
racetrack, to be
way
honest.
opposite. I remember I was doing instruction to pay for an HPDE, and the student I had would brake like you were coming up to a stop sign where it was like soft, more, 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 and I'm like, ah, we're going off the racetrack, and then he would finally put in the brake like at the end. Yeah, it's just like completely opposite of like what we actually do out
Yes.
on the racetrack or in an autocross or whatever, and to try to separate people from that is a challenge. Um, Tom, we should try to wrap up a little bit because I have to leave in like 7 minutes.
Sure.
Apologies. I honestly, this could have been like a 2.5 hour episode because I feel like we're like getting into the meat and potatoes right now.
The juicy
It's a real
stuff.
big
Yeah.
bummer. Yeah. But I have obligations that I have to commit to, so I apologize that we're gonna have to cut it a little short.
I have one more question about I don't even know what it's about. But Shelly, you are an
Yeah.
artist as well. You're a visual artist, drawing, and you're a glass blower.
Hmm.
My driving is very related to my musical background,
Hmm.
um, rhythm, etc. Does whether it's art or not, is there something from your outside of driving world that like really applies to your driving or to your competition mindset, to the way that you approach the paddock, whatever it may be? I'm really curious about that.
Sure. Well, yeah, I'll answer that and then we'll leave the rest,
For
the
part two.
further discussion to mystery here for the moment. Um, Glass blowing is an interesting, um, artistic endeavor because it's very physical. It's really almost more like a sport in some ways. It's very physically demanding. It's hot. You're miserable. And if you make a mistake, um, the best case scenario is, your piece of glass falls on the floor and you lost what you were working on. Worst case, you set someone on fire.
Like a
And
like a person?
it's like, it's
What?
happened.
What?
I mean, it doesn't happen to me, but
Okay.
um, yeah,
We
I
could
know
see
someone who
someone
was
blowing
using
the
a
fire.
torch.
Looking for
I know someone
legs,
was using
looking
a
for
torch
eyes, lighting people
and
on fire.
yeah. No, someone they actually set a girl on fire, like they ran the torch across her back and it like caught her bra on fire and everything. And she was like weirdly good natured about it. She's like, she had these like scars on her shoulder blades
No way.
from like, while she was healing. And she's like, oh, that's where they cut my wings off. So glass blowers are an interesting crew. I'm probably like the only glass blower. I mean, and maybe Ken. Yeah, Ken and I are probably the only glass blowers who do not have tattoos.
Oh, wow, they're
Um,
actually really
you know,
awesome. Tom's posting some pictures.
TMI there. But it's you have to be extraordinarily in the moment when you blow glass. You don't have a lot of time because it's like as soon as it comes out, you've reheated it. It's like it's getting cold, and you have like that moment to it's an act of volition to do whatever you are going to do to it, and then related to that, um, it's you have to be anticipating what you're gonna do next, because you
Mm.
have to know where the tool is. Because if you fumble around to try to find it, by the time you put it on the glass, it's not gonna work. So there's a look ahead aspect to glass blowing, and you have to be
Yeah.
concentrating on what you're doing, and it requires a lot of balance. You're trying to we make pumpkins and stuff that are like 35 or 40 pounds on the end of a pipe. You've got something that's like 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. And I mean, it's so hot, it's burning the hair off your arm to get anywhere near it to work on it. And you have to keep it perfectly balanced because if you pause for a moment, it slumps to one side. And it's like having a tire with all the weight on one side of it. It's like it never turns properly again. So you're balancing all of that at the same time, the way you're balancing a car, in terms of what you're doing. And I think in a lot of ways, glass blowing is a lot like racing. So it's kind of a good thing to do when I'm not driving cars.
Yeah, it sounds like you need like a calm focus, like an intense focus, but like have your body calm, just like you would to set like your fastest laps, and
Absolutely.
anticipation and all that. Yeah, that ties way more
Yeah.
into racing than I ever thought it would.
Yeah, that answer was incredible. The part that I think is the most like resonant to me is the anticipation. If you're anticipating, I was coaching somebody once and we came up with anticipate and modulate. And it was like
Hmm.
anticipate the car's going to do this, and then when it does it, modulate it and keep it there, you know? And it was a car that required being driven on the slip angle a little bit, and it helped that driver a lot. But that anticipation of understanding that the car is going to do the same thing every time at X point, or when you do Y input or whatever it is, that's super, super applicable. I still want to come glass blow.
Yes, I'll be in Pennsylvania this summer. Just it's not that far from Ohio.
Yes, let's do
Ooh,
it.
I didn't realize you'd be up in
Lizard brain field trip.
Pennsylvania. That would be
What's that?
fun.
I mean, I'm in Cleveland. Tom's in Columbus. We're not that far from Pennsylvania. Lizard Brains
Yeah.
field trip. We go out and blow some glass. Maybe we make a lizard, or at least something that's green that we can say is a lizard.
We could make a lizard. We could do a podcast while we're, like blowing glass somehow. Or I mean,
We can figure it out.
yeah.
Sounds
Yeah, you're
special.
not that you're 4.5 hours from me or something.
Yeah, no, I'm totally down.
Right.
I'm totally down for this. And
Yeah.
I think my fiance then wife, I think she would enjoy that too.
Oh, yeah. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm totally down. I'm
Okay.
okay. So this is only part one. Part two will be in the winter. We'll definitely have to have you on again, Shelly. But if fiance is going to turn into wife, we do have to end the show. So,
Yeah.
so
On that note,
yeah. Tom, do you want to take us out?
No, I want to let Shelly do it. First of
Oh yeah,
all,
that's right. That's
oh,
right.
we have a tradition here. But first,
yeah,
Shelly, I think you're so cool. Thank you so much for coming onto this podcast, and I
my
can't wait
pleasure.
to see you in person and talk more. And hopefully, we get to chat soon more again. Okay, so we have a outro on the podcast. When DJ says go, there's about a 5-second music that's going to play out the outro. And in that 5 seconds, you get to say whatever you want, but you have to end it with "I love your hair and I hope you win." Can you do that?
I
I'm
can do that.
I'm gonna play
All right.
the
So
I'm
DJ's
gonna
gonna
play the
say yes.
music. Hold on, I'm gonna play the
Yeah.
music for you just so you can see what it's like, and then I'm gonna end it. So because basically, so like this is the music, you're talking blah 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 blah. Like you say something cheeky, maybe it's something a little clever, and then you say, "Love your hair, hope you win." So you say it like just before it gets to like the pause, and you know what? It never goes well at all when we have a guest. So there's
Even when I do it.
sometimes it doesn't go well when Tom does it. But it's the anticipation. You got to anticipate it and modulate it. You ready?
Anticipate. Okay. Okay. Anticipate and modulate. I think we would make the best Pop Gear team ever. So I love your hair and go out and win.